Hi, welcome to Wednesday. We're going to be talking today about Mercury retrograde. It starts today, which is the 17th, June 17th, and it runs through July 12th. A Mercury retrograde, everybody talks about it. And what it is, the Mercury is not going backwards, but the Earth catches up with a planet and it appears to be going backward. With Mercury, that happens about 3 times a year. Because Mercury is the planet of communication, that's why it just throws everything in a tizzy when it's a Mercury retrograde. And the crazy part of it is, there's been so many retrogrades. Right now, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto are also in retrograde. But they don't bother us like the Mercury does. Mercury, the retrograde is actually right now in the planet of Cancer, which means that any water sign in astrology is going to be really affected by this retrograde. Now, what this means is you have to be very careful traveling, making plans, buying a new vehicle, elective surgeries. Communications is bad in all of these things. So you just, and if like an elective surgery, if it's an emergency, there's nothing you can do. But just be very, very careful if it's in a retrograde. And you have to wonder sometimes, it can't always be bad. Say that the last Mercury retrograde you were going after a specific job and you were pretty sure you were going to get it and you didn't. This Mercury retrograde, all of a sudden, this employer the person that you were looking for the job may call you up and say, you know what, we've went over your resume again and we want you to, come in for another talk. Of course, with the virus going on, that's probably not going to happen. But again, I was just using that as an example. So a lot of times, things that got started in a Mercury retrograde, a past one can finish this time in a Mercury retrograde. And you just have to be very, very aware of what's going on around you. YouTube number 20 goes into really good details about that. So if you have time, go back and listen and watch that video. This is from Ethel in South Carolina. I heard you on a morning radio show talking about a Mercury retrograde, and you were talking about buying or selling property. Can you go into some detail? Well, when you buy a house or any kind of a property, you are signing a lot of papers. If you can avoid signing final papers on any property that you're buying, don't sign them during a Mercury retrograde. And there's one big reason for that. If you, 20 years from now, if you go to sell that house or that piece of property that you bought during a Mercury retrograde, you're not going to sell it. It can be priced right. It can be perfect. Because the final papers were done on a Mercury retrograde. About the only way you're going to sell it is on another Mercury retrograde. Now, if you've got a property for sale, it's priced right. There's no reason why it's not selling. Go back and look on your computer and ask the question to your computer for the Mercury retrograde that happened the year you signed the papers on your property. If those papers were signed during a Mercury retrograde that year, at least you know what the problem is. So and again, the same thing with a vehicle. You know what? You can wait 3 weeks to buy a vehicle. You don't have to buy it during a Mercury retrograde. So that would be that. This is from David in Texas. during a Mercury retrograde, how can I protect myself? I do a lot of contracts for people, and I don't want to be in a fog. That's a good way to put it, because a Mercury retrograde can put people in a fog sometimes. So if you carry a stone, and there are two stones that I know of for sure that will help. Excuse me. Whoa, sorry about that. A hematite or a fluorite, any color. They say if you carry one of these stones during a Mercury retrograde, you will think clearer. When you read a contract or write a contract, you'll see and understand what you're writing, and it should go a whole lot better for you if you carry one of those stones. Okay, here's excuse me. This is from Alexa in Los Angeles. I have to tell you, these letters that I get sometimes are amazing. People ask me questions that I never ever thought of before, let alone know what an answer is. And this was exactly one of them. My daughter was born during a Mercury retrograde 3 years ago. Is this going to be a problem for her as she grows up? You know, I really had no clue. Obviously, babies don't stop being born during a Mercury retrograde, so obviously, there's going to be babies that are definitely born during a retrograde. And so did some research on it, because when I don't know an answer to something, that's what I'm going to do. And this is what I found out. Babies born during a Mercury retrograde is not common, but it is certainly not rare. You might even assume that being born during this transit would be considered bad luck, but it is not considered bad luck. It's actually good luck to be born during a Mercury retrograde. The only downside to being born during a Mercury retrograde, if you can even consider it downside, is that it makes you think in a way that not everyone may find it easy to understand at first. I'm going to stop here for a minute because I'm thinking about this, and I have 2 children, and day and night, same parents, but they're 2 different children, absolutely. And I was just wondering about this, so I had Ted, because, I don't do this computer thing. So I had Ted look it up, the year that the girls were born and the retrogrades for that year. And good golly, wouldn't you know that the one daughter that I was questioning was actually born on a Mercury retrograde. So I think that was very interesting. But the truth is, being born during Mercury retrograde gives you an advantage. You see every angle, any idea, every idea, because you have a natural tendency to look backwards, sideways, which is something Mercury is not naturally aiming to do. So you have a tendency to review your choices and redo things over and over again till you get it right. Which, with my one daughter, I say she's a perfectionist. And that could account for why she is like that. So here's the best part. Being born during a Mercury retrograde means that you experience a boost of energy and intelligence whenever Mercury enters retrograde. You're not bumping into walls like everyone else. You know what you're doing. So thank you so much for asking that question, because I would have had no idea that that is something that would be, I never gave it a thought. So it might be fun for you to check and see who of your relatives or your children or yourself was ever born during a a Mercury retrograde. That might answer a whole lot of questions. I don't know what this coughing is about, but another one's coming. So I'm going to cut this one a little short, and I'm just going to tell you that I'm still doing the Zoom on Fridays nights from 7:30 to 9, and we had somebody on from Germany and Canada, and they're very nice. They're a lot of fun. If you have a chance, do that. We're starting to schedule events again, and so check it out on Facebook and see what's coming up. As long as everybody seems to be getting back to normal, hopefully these events will take place. And next week, we're just going to do questions. So everybody have a good week. Keep your eye on the Mercury retrograde, and we will talk next week. Thanks so much.